All right. Welcome in Toilets to Titles. We have a bonus NFL draft episode. I just did the Cowboys show, now about them Cowboys. If any of you are coming over from there, don't be discouraged by Efram's San Francisco 49ers sweatshirt. This is a regular show. Joe's got a Giants hat on, so we're all like-minded individuals. But why are we united today? We were united by the NFL draft because we are all absolute nuts. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's guest. It's Efram Geller. That's at Mr. One Relevant. So at Mr. It looks like Mr. Irrelevant. It's very cool, but he's not irrelevant to us. This is a guy we've been discussing a lot of NFL draft topics with over the past few months, and we're glad to have him on. Efram, how we doing?
Doing great. It's nice to finally meet you guys. I mean, as in person as it gets these days. And I mean, it's awesome. Down to talk football. And I mean, it's draft week, so this is where it ends. So I mean, lots to talk about.
Where this year's class ends, right? And then we'll analyze for like a few weeks, and then boom, it's already on to next week. And I am joined, my co-host on this magic carpet ride today is Joe Knows at JoJ_Clark. Joe, what's cooking?
Oh, it's a beautiful Sunday morning. It's raining, but still, it's nice weather out there. Otherwise, temperature-wise, I'm looking forward to discussing some NFL draft. I remember 2 months ago, I was like, oh, it's 2 months away. Now it's just a few days away.
Yeah,
and it's
too quick.
It's kind of mind blowing in a way.
Yeah.
But so looking forward to it. Looking forward to discussing NFL prospects and the process of scouting and profiling players with Efram. We've come to know him over the past few months a little bit.
Yeah, no, you sound really clear today. Crystal.
Do I really?
Yeah, you sound crystal clear. You got a new mic?
I do. I do have a new mic. It's over here, as a matter of fact, but I didn't want to risk it. I have some echo problems here in the corner of my house, so didn't want to risk. It actually works better with recordings.
Okay, smart. So you're smart. All right, Efram, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your website? It's MrIrrelevant.substack.com. Kind of give us some background information. When did you start this thing? When did you start analyzing players? How did you develop the website? Why don't you kind of give us the overall lay of the land for Mr. Irrelevant?
Yeah, so this is the first year I put out the Substack, and I mean, it's still up there. I still have a website. It's not very much in use, and I don't publish much on it. But the first year I actually put out a draft guide was 2021. But I've been scouting before that. I scouted 2019 and 2020 classes, but that was back when I was more focused on predicting the picks and mock drafts and big boards. And I mean, I just always loved that thing. NFL.com's Predict the Pick Challenge was like my highlight of the year. I think 2019, the Bosa Kyler Murray year was like 10 out of 32 right. And I was like, this doesn't get better than this. Like, this is my highlight as a draft analyst. And then I really started getting into watching the players for myself. And it's just a whole new game where you could see these players from college go to the NFL. You know what they're good at. You know what they need to improve at. And it's just a whole new level of scouting. So 2021 was the first year I put out a draft guide, and it was mostly blurbs on the players, strengths and weaknesses. I would say this guy's a good speed rusher. This guy's a good power rusher. I'd watch like 1 to 2 games of film on each guy, and it was nice. It was a good start. And then 2022, I was like, I have the more time in my hands now. I need to really step it up and dive into this further. And in 2021, I said it was all about, we got the box like the speed rusher. And then in 2022, it was about breaking that down into multiple different skills, right? Does he have bend? Is he quick off the line? How's his footwork? Hand counters, hand placement. And you start to kind of develop that thinking of going down into the smaller details and watching more games and really understanding what goes into every specific trait. Because then there's more different opinions on players, because you could see someone as a speed rusher, but he lacks some bend and some hand counters. But I see someone who, bursts off the line immediately and is taking the quarterback in 3 seconds and is blowing by a lot of these lumbering offensive linemen. So that was big for me. And then this year, it was all about the nuances and fitting players into roles and schemes, the 3-4, the 4-3. You got players like it's hard to pronounce his name, but Ade Adebaware out of Northwestern.
Adetomiwa, I believe.
Adetomiwa, yeah. I mean, it's tough to pronounce his name, but he's a phenomenal prospect, but top 50 guy for me. And he's super athletic, but he's a weird build. He's like long arms, but he's a much shorter defensive lineman. So you kind of want him rushing the passer from the inside because he's not the most bendy edge rusher. But when he's rushing or when he's defending the run, you want him, lining up wide 9 or lining up on the outside. So he's a phenomenal player and one of the best athletes in this class. But he needs to find a team that could properly use his skill set. So it's interesting. So you got to really get into that. So there's that. And yeah.
Yeah. So you basically you started small, simple mock drafts, started to get into the nuances of the players. And now that you have the site, you're doing the mock drafts, you're doing the analysis. Now you're getting hyper focused on the smaller nuances, which separates probably good talent from great talent and great talent from elite talent. So I like to see your development, but you mentioned mock drafts. We're doing a mock draft challenge at toiletstitles.com with the fellas and the ladies over at draftcountdown.com. Go to Toilets Titles Twitter and you will see the pinned tweet. It will tell you how to enter. It's absolutely free. It is free. All you need to do is subscribe to 2 YouTube channels, get in our Gilded Chat, because that's where we do all of our discussion. Efram's in there. Joe's in there. We do mock drafts all the time. It is just our place for football discussing. Efram, are you going to be putting in a mock draft into the mock draft challenge?
Of course. I've been preparing. I've been getting a couple down this week, and I'm excited to see what I could do. I mean, you got to with a lot of the people in the mock draft challenge, you got to put in some heat in the later picks in the first round. So
yeah,
excited.
And you got a few challengers at Toilets to Titles, because I know you've been working with us, and I know some of your selections in the mock drafts. We got some elder statesmen, some old crusty dogs who see some of the selections and they don't like it. And I know, but some of the players you were on a little bit earlier are. Yeah. So some of the players you were on a little bit earlier are starting to rise now. And I think that's incredible, because you got to say it during the NFL draft season. If you do your homework, right? If you're just somebody who just kind of watches highlights and, to each their own. So I'm not judging, but when you just, it's one thing, but when you actually do your homework and you've studied and you've watched these players, you have to say it with your chest. It doesn't mean you need to be braggadocious or whatever, but you stay firm. And I respect that you've stayed firm on some of those players. So we've talked about kind of your process, right? How it's developed, your website, all that stuff. Let's talk about the past. Okay. Let's talk about some hits, some misses over the past few years, because we all have them. I know Darius Geis, Kelvin Harmon, those are 2 of my big misses. Micah Parsons is a huge, I was talking to Campy and Joe and Shane Hallam knows. He's got the receipts. The year before Micah Parsons' draft, I said number 1 player in the draft. That's my Cowboys pick for next year. And then Shane told me from draftcountdown.com, I have the receipts. He said the Cowboys will not pick high enough to select him. Dak Prescott goes down. Fate wills itself into the conversation. We get Micah Parsons. And you said when you got 10 out of 32 picks correct on the NFL Draft Challenge, you thought you arrived and that's it. When I predicted a year in advance Micah Parsons would go to the Cowboys, that's where I got to put my cap up and kind of retire. But let's talk about some hits and some misses.
Well, speaking of Micah Parsons, I think I have to start with that, unfortunately, it was an obvious talent, but for me, I really questioned his process ability as a linebacker, and I didn't really anticipate him moving to edge because, there weren't that many guys doing that before.
Did you see his Cotton Bowl film?
I saw his Cotton Bowl film. And
that one, to me, was the best film of any linebacker I've ever scouted.
So for me, it was just I thought he was a phenomenal talent and a phenomenal athlete who wasn't yet putting it together. And I wanted to see him maybe get drafted and try out some easier linebacker roles. I don't want him to be a Mike immediately, which I saw some people wanted him to. And then the Cowboys decided to put him on the line. So I was lower. I had him as a top 15, 20 player, but he was my linebacker 3, which was disgusting to look back on it. And I had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah I loved. He was my favorite player in the draft. And he's been dealing with injuries, but he's been pretty good. But I had Zaven Collins ahead of him, which he went 16th in the draft, but it's rough.
You're not the only one. You're not. A lot of people love so a lot of people love Zaven Collins. So let's talk about some other your hits and misses.
My biggest hit in the past couple of years is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I loved coming out of college. He was super instinctual, knew how to run routes, caught a ton of touchdowns, and he was a guy who isn't the most athletic player, didn't test super well at the combine. I think his RAS was not particularly high, and a lot of people thought, okay, he's going to be maybe a back end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, who can make a couple plays a game, but isn't going to contribute highly to the team's offense. And I loved him. He's this guy who's been trained from literally day one. He's the best work ethic of any wide receiver I've ever scouted. You see all the intangibles, all the processing, all the instincts, and I had him as an easy top 50 player in the class and one of my best receivers in that class.
Yeah, that's a key thing. Is like I find it hard to find when scouting players. I find it hard to find information on their work ethic and their reputation, unless it's like glaringly bad, and unless there's some real red flags there. But I do, but I would like, to me that's so important as well. Like it'll be like later on, and maybe the process, maybe even after the draft, where too often I'll learn about their work ethic, and it's usually after the NFL and they've proven themselves, like, oh, this guy came up with a great work ethic. He already had a great work ethic, and I think it's so important. How coachable they are, and their work ethic. But it's such an important piece in grading players and trying to decide where you think they're going to go in terms of what round and how high.
Joe, you have any hits or misses?
It's funny. I was trying to like rack my brain and like
Joe doesn't miss because Joe knows.
No, I am not. That's right. Joe knows. I'm not trying to say I don't have any misses. I thought James Cook would be, and I can't say this is a miss yet, but James Cook, running back for Buffalo, came out of Georgia last year. I thought he would be the clear-cut RB1 by the end of last season, and I can't say that's true, and I can't say that will ever really be true. But I mean, I loved Amon-Ra St. Brown coming out. He's even better than I thought he would be, and I was coach. I loved Micah Parsons. Coming out, like, I thought he was like a top 5 player, and it hurt when he went to the Cowboys, and we traded back. We wound up with Tony.
And imagine being the Eagles who traded the selection with the Cowboys so we could get him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Giants could have stayed there and taken Parsons, but it is what it is, and I knew he was never falling to 20 when we picked Tony. So,
man, so Efram, Andrew Campy, other member of Toilets to Titles, who's on the Cowboys show with me. He does a lot of the background work with the website and whatnot. He has a question for you. He said, as someone who's never scouted college players, what would you have done differently in your early years of scouting? Like, what do you think you would have started with first?
I think I would have started with the ground up in terms of learning all the different techniques for the positions, and then started scouting for myself, because it's very easy to watch film and just trust your eyes and your instincts. And a lot of the times it turns out to just be players you like, or you scout on the helmet as opposed to scouting on the pure skills. So, I mean, that's something I'm still working on. But if I were to go back and start it again, I would have spent a couple months learning all the offensive line techniques, defensive line techniques, and worked my way up from there.
I like it. The nuances. I like that. Smart. But when we're young, we don't always think practically. We want to jump. Well, at least I'll speak for myself. I want to jump right in. I started with highlights, YouTube highlights, and then I was like, man, this guy's great. If the song was great and the hits were big, like, I love this player. And then after a few years, I was like, wait a minute, like, there's got to be more to this. Like, everyone can't be elite. Everyone can't be great. And then I started, and I didn't even know you could find individual game film, and then game film where it was like they had the one player, just all of his clips. And then that opened a major door for me, and then I started messing with my template, or what am I looking for? Pros, cons, route tree. Like, then I started picking things from different sites, like Draft Network, The Athletic. Like, what do they look for? Like, what are their different categories? Yep. And I made my own categories from that. So it's, you can't, like, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So that's kind of how it works. But go ahead, Joe.
So it's a learning process. Yeah. Efram, what do you think for you? What is your easiest position to grade, and your most difficult position to evaluate, I should say?
So I say easy, just in terms of kind of guessing on what these players are going to be at the next. Others. Yeah, I'm easy. I'll probably edge rushers, just because it's pretty linear in terms of their skills in that college to the NFL, and their size, and obviously every position has its issues, but it's very easy to find. It's easier to find film of one-on-one reps of just, offensive lineman, defensive lineman. It's the same, I guess, similar for tackles, but if you find an edge rusher versus an offensive tackle, you could find hundreds of pure reps of head-on rushing, and that makes it much easier. And the hardest for me has to be safety, just because even watching all 22 film, so much is relying on the coverage, so much is relying on the scheme now. Yeah. It's like you have to know what coverages you're watching before you even know if a guy's doing the right thing.
Yeah. I have a type, though. I have a type for safety. Joe knows. Like I like those twitchy, like
Mhm.
versatile, downhill, can cover, can run. Like so, I have like a
Hard to
bucket.
find.
Yeah, there. But when you find them, you know you found them.
What
I
did you
think they're
like?
first round picks.
Did you like Javon Holland coming out?
Loved him. Loved Holland.
Yeah,
Me too.
I watched him and I was like, he is the one in this class.
This
Yeah.
year they brought in Jalen Ramsey, and now they have Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey. Imagine
Crazy.
being Javon Holland, being able to roam free, knowing that you are absolutely covered underneath. I think Javon Holland is going to be an All-Pro this year. You know who else I loved, who I think just can't get out of his own way? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I loved, like, coming out of Florida. That's my type.
Where is he now?
He just went to Detroit, I believe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Once one of you take over the conversation, I'll Google it. But he is aggressive, physical. He's a mosquito. That's my type. I like guys that are just buzzing in the wide receiver's earlobe the whole game, and or the quarterback or the running back, like they're just active. Honey Badger is if you can be somewhat like that. And so Holland's a little different, but Holland is like the ideal. He's range like for days, but he's also got the instincts and the reaction abilities of players like that. We got somebody, Facebook user says, go Gators. So Joe, you got another question? I'm going to look up where Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is right now.
No, I was not really another question. I was just gonna just add to it that like it seems like it's funny how it seems like we all have, and even people that I like, other people that I follow regular, people who do this regularly, have been doing it for a long time. I like to listen to interviews of them, and it's funny how like everyone seems to have like their positions that they're more comfortable. They have more success with, but I think it's also a comfort level. Like we all have our own trained eye or way of evaluating a position, and everyone's got their own like individual groups of weaknesses. Like I listened to someone the other day who was like, yeah, my definite strength is is evaluating offensive line players, specifically interior offensive line. And he said cornerbacks, that is DBs, scare the what out of them.
That's quarterbacks for me. I cannot scout quarterbacks. and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Scare me.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is in Detroit. All right, Efram, let's talk about some of the players that you're higher on than most this year.
So just like I liked Amon-Ra St. Brown coming out a couple years ago, I'm not saying he's going to be anywhere near Amon-Ra St. Brown's level because he's like a true wide receiver one at this moment. But in terms of prospect scouting, Xavier Hutchinson, Iowa State receiver, he's my wide receiver 5, which I've gotten like a ton of discourse for that. But I heard this rule from, I think it was the Athletic Andy Staples, where if a receiver is extremely productive and his usage in the offense is just sky high, and the defenses know if they key in on this player and they stop him, they could shut down this offense. And they do it, and this player still puts up countless yards, receptions, touchdowns. And Xavier Hutchinson did just that this year. 1,100 yards. That's, I think, 6th in the league, 3rd highest PFF grade, led the nation in catches. So he just balled out this year. And he is one of the few versatile receivers who has the length to be an X, but can play in the slot. He knows how to win at all 3 levels. He has amazing hands, amazing instincts, and he probably won't be a top 50 pick like I have him because he's not the best athlete and he doesn't have the twitch that NFL GMs fall in love with, but he's going to be a good football player. I think he's going to play immediately, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a high-end wide receiver 2. And it's the same thing I wrote in Amon-Ra St. Brown's thing, that with his work ethic and his intangibles and his instincts, I could see him doing whatever comes. And it's the same thing with Xavier Hutchinson for me.
I'd love to see him go to Minnesota. Like, guys who have high-end wide receiver 2 upside, that would be such an ideal landing spot. Go play next to a guy like Justin Jefferson. And, all the attention can go over there, and you're good at your job. You get open, come down with the football, like decent, like 700-800 yards. That's solid. All right. Who's some other players you're high on?
J.L. Skinner. We were just talking about safeties. J.L. Skinner, Boise State.
We talked about him at the Senior Bowl.
Well, he tore his pec at the Senior Bowl, which is like just been awful for him and awful for his stock, because I had him as a top 50 player like a couple months ago, and that wasn't pretty much consensus at the point. People had him top 50s. There were him some top 40s, even some first rounders. And then when you tear your pec at the Senior Bowl and you don't test the combine, you have everyone else jumping him. And I've seen him out of the top 100. I've seen him 90s and 80s. And I don't really get that. I loved his film. He's 6'4". He runs around the field. He's speed. And he makes crazy hits all over, and he just finds the ball. And look, he's not going to be a traditional man-to-man coverage safety because when you're 6'4", it's hard to be fluid like that. But he is another instinctual player who I think is also a great athlete and is going to cause some terror in the box.
Yeah, I think the problem is the way his frame. I heard someone describe him to AJ Green, like body-wise, like just rail thin. And I think the concern was he's rail thin, and maybe because he's rail thin, he's injury prone. And then he goes and has a muscular injury. So I think the concerns, but also out of sight, out of mind. When you're hurt, you're not training, and someone will get a steal. It's a bad thing for the player's pocket when they fall. But if they can ball, if they could play, it's decent for them because usually they end up in a better situation.
Yeah. I think he's fair second round value.
Yeah.
Just from my perspective.
The range and the physical prowess for him. And he's at Boise State. I think the NFL thinks highly enough of if you can play at Boise State, there's a grit. There's a grit that it takes to be a strong player at Boise State. And I think the NFL covets that. And I think that works in JL Skinner's favor. All right. So you have any other players higher on the most? Sam
Laporta also pretty similar to Xavier Hutchinson. I've been talking about I'd rather take Sam Laporta in the third than Michael Mayer in the first 100 out of 100 times. Super productive. Same thing where defenses tried to stop him on a horrendous, like one of the worst Iowa offenses we've seen in college football history. And they were not able to do that whatsoever. Tested great at the combine. Ran pretty well. He's not the best blocker because he's a little undersized, but he shows the effort. And I think he'll be a good enough blocker for it to not be a liability and for him to be able to contribute in that way. And then he's a relatively well-rounded athlete, a well-rounded player who I think does a lot of things pretty well. And I think he's going to contribute immediately. And I have him as my tight end 3, ahead of Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave, which is a whole nother discussion. But I think he's going to be very good. I think he's going to be just a solid tight end with some athletic upside who's going to contribute.
So I think he's the best yak. I think he's the best yard after catch tight end in this class.
He led the league and he led college football in broken tackles this year. And I think he had the most broken tackles of the last 10 years PFF charting. So he's clearly going to do that again.
Usually his runs too after the catch, it's not like he just makes one guy miss. It's usually like a series of, and it's not what you think from an Iowa tight end. Like he's not bullying you over. Like his elusiveness at the point of contact is impressive. He has good, so he will lower the shoulder, but he's very good at evading contact at the last second and then maneuvering one missed tackle, working that into his next. He's very good at making two guys miss in a row.
Yeah, just turn on, you could probably look it up on Twitter or anywhere. Look up Sam Laporta, Kentucky, and it's just 7 tacklers. He's brushing all them off, and it's making it look like he's already in the NFL and they're in high school. So I would check that out if you're interested in Sam Laporta.
Thanks. Joe, you got anything to say, my guy?
Yeah, no, I love the value with him. I don't think this is a really good, interesting tight end class, and I wouldn't be surprised if he shouldn't fall beyond the third, but if he falls into the fourth, man, someone's going to get a steal. I think even the third, I think it's going to be steal because I do think he's up there with the other highly, touted tight ends, like Mayer, and Kincaid. I think he's right up there. And like Efram was saying, if you're getting this guy in the third round compared to some of the other guys you're going to get in the first, the value is going to be incredible.
Where do I have Sam Laporta? I have as my 70th player in the top 100. So I like him. I have Tucker Kraft ahead of him just because I think Tucker Kraft can do more. He can block.
I think I have him behind only Mayer, and I'm a Darnell Washington guy. I'd say Mayer and I'd say Laporta might be my number 3 tight end right now, but it depends what you're looking for too.
So you have him ahead of Kincaid as well.
Neck and neck. I don't think you can go wrong. I should say I have them. For me, you can't go wrong.
So you have a supporter, Efram.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit. It's great to know. Got my back.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's risen up Joe Knows big board.
Yeah, Joe knows you need to help the Coach Shep's big board on toiletstotitles.com. We're trying to get to 100 here.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, you know what you're doing. You don't need my help.
I try. Well, hey, fellas, I appreciate you, Efram. We're gonna have to do this more often. We've been talking. We'll talk. I sent you a DM already. I don't know what you're doing Thursday during the NFL draft. We're doing a live stream. You're more than welcome to hop on for any range of picks. I know you're a 49ers fan. I don't think they'd pick in the first round, but if
They don't pick till the end of the third, so it's going to be basically nothing day one.
Well, I sent out an invite, so you let me know if it works in your schedule, if you want to come on for some picks. Joe's going to be at the bar with his buddies, but he usually hops on from the Giant stream. Dinow and Boomer are going to be at the NFL draft, so Dennis is going to hop on live from the NFL draft for about 5 picks. Nino will be there. Campy's going to hop on. It's like a celebration. So, if you want to come on, you're more than welcome. Go ahead, Joe.
Is Nino going to be at the draft as well, or you mean on the
No,
program?
Nino's working, man. Me and Nino are working, so you're gonna be at the bar, but Nino's gonna be on like 4 different streams. Yeah, right. You're gonna the bartender's tab. That's what's gonna be working. Nino's gonna be on. Dude, don't sleep. So he's gonna be on about 4 streams, and then KT's gonna be working the background and producing because we got tons of shorts that are gonna be going up. But again, I appreciate you, Efram, coming on, man. It's been a long time coming. I'm looking forward to working on hopefully some more content with you. Everybody, if you can, go check him out on Twitter. It's at MR1RRELEVANT. If you go to his Twitter account, you'll be able to see everything about him. You'll be able to see his website. You'll be able to subscribe, and you could see his prospect analysis, and you could probably print it out, and while the players are picked, you can see what Efram's thinking, and this kid's going places. I hate saying a kid because you're a young man, but you're enthused and you're constantly talking prospects. And no matter where you are in this point of your analyst career, you're trending in the right direction, and it's fun being a part of, and it's fun watching.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Hopefully, I'll be able to join Thursday. It's been great.
Excellent.
It's been great talking to you guys.
Excellent. And Joe, I'll see you in Tenafly in about an hour or 2 hours for a soccer game.
Yeah, probably more like 12 o'clock. I have an errand or 2 to run before, but we will be there before the game's over.
Excellent. And it's not me playing Joe in a soccer game. Anybody listening at home, it's not 2 adult soccer teams competing. It's youth. Emmett's got a soccer game. So everybody, we will catch you all later on. It's draft week. Let's have some fun. I hope all of your NFL draft dreams come true, unless you're a fan of a team in the NFC East. All right. Then I hope you get Cole in your stocking. All right.
We
all right,
mess it up too often.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Take care.